the first wall, the first section of the first wall, has over an 80% match to a manual we used from Ray Johnson. Now, Ray Johnson worked with Dr. Abu Ghazi in putting together what they sort of call proto-Egyptian or pre-Egyptian hieroglyphs. And they worked for some time. We've got handwritten notes from her signing back and talking about their correspondence, so they put it together. Now, she's from the Egyptian Museum, and she was a Directress General at the time. Now, we looked at his work, because he discovered them first, and he worked on them for years and years, an incredibly intelligent man. And he should put together a manual of 3,010 glyphs. Now, only Minnie gave me one of his manuals. We've got one of the very few that actually are outside his or only Minnie's. And we've used that. But the trick is this. After you go past what we think is the Egyptian story about Nebuchadnezzar, I definitely see that reading there from the Proto-Egyptian that Ray Johnson's done. Once you go to the next two walls, your match to Proto-Egyptian drops from over 80 to below 45%. Now, a lot of critics have said, oh, well, that's an example of why it's fake, because it should be much more faithful to Egyptian. But no, we think that is the original part of the story, the original language, and that the Egyptian part that was added later is a derivative. And if you've got the first language, you can't use a derivative manual and then read it. You can't. You'll get ideas.
That's right.
But you'll lose it because 55% of the glyphs that are past that wall do not match in any Egyptian reading. Now, people fudge a bit and slide them in, but I can see in a lot of times, and no, you just can't do it. There's nothing that's close. Now, we think that's the first language, the oldest way of writing, and therefore it's difficult to read the two. But we think by now, and we've done a lot of work with Laird Scranton, who's a real expert on Dogon and Egyptian hieroglyphs, and is working on what he calls the first language, which is the Na-Ki. Now, we believe, and he's leaning that way, it's not there all the way at the moment, but he's certainly working with us a lot, and he's liaising quite constantly. There's one glyph there, which is just a stick man standing. Now, Laird became very involved because that one's not Egyptian, but according to him, it is the symbol for the Na-Ki language, the very first language, and it's placed above everything else. And it has two other meanings, black man and serpent. Well, the original people worshipped the serpent. They are black, and they made the first language. So it sort of makes sense that stick figure would lead off the whole of that passage. And we believe that second wall and third wall, which make about 260 glyphs, are the original first story of the first language. And in that, we believe that particular place and one we're working up, which we call the Standing Stones, form a sort of tabernacle.
Wow.
And a testimony about our heritage, our gods, and our purpose.
There's
other areas to that story we're still working on.
There's a very, very interesting glyph amongst that you're talking about that caught my eye that looks very much like some kind of laboratory.
Oh, yes, that one. Well, you know, I don't know what else it can be, and I know the one you're talking about, and I'm sure it's in that people want to look, they'll see it in the article. That's exactly what we called it. You see, what's interesting with that one is that particular laboratory is surrounded by one figure that appears 5 times all around there. Now, at the very first time it appears right up near the stick man, there's a figure there which has got 3 circles and a leg. Now, according to Laird's book, Sacred Symbols of the Dogon, if you go to page 220, you will see exactly the same symbol, exactly the same. And according to him, it means double helix DNA.
Oh.
There it is standing on its legs, but there's a progression in the stories, ladies and gentlemen. What then happens is a bit further down, we see the 3 circles, we see the legs, but it's got arms standing out, or pushing out, extended. And further down, as you get closer to the laboratory you so correctly identified, the glyph gets bigger. 3 bigger circles, the hands are standing out, and inside the hands are 2 pyramids. And then just above the laboratory, we see the 3 circles running on the horizontal, and dissecting it in the middle is a staff that bisects, like splices a gene right in the middle. And those 3 circles together look exactly like a gene. And below that is what you identify as the laboratory. But
Wow.
you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to put that together and come up with, is somebody creating us? Because that's what that passage says. And that's why the so-called experts can't read it when they say, oh, we see Sumerian there, we see a bit of this, and we see some ancient Egyptian, but it doesn't make sense because it's all over the place. And that's fine, because all the other languages come from there, so their signs will be sourced there, and of course they'll change it as they go.
And these symbols that we're seeing are the originators.
We are looking at that.
Approximately how many identifiable and non-identifiable hieroglyphs have you found to date in your research?
On that wall, sitting at around about of the 300 until Laird's involvement, who gave me up some very plain glyphs that I actually gave not much account to. We were sitting on probably about 180 that we were confident with, because you've got to be so careful. If it is what we all say, the most ancient language, we're not going to get it right no matter how often we do it, because there's no base, there's no manual. We have to look at other people, and we've got a lot of people from all over the place, very versed in this stuff, that are helping us too, and we put it all together. But after Laird's input, where he gave us some of the plain ones that we thought, oh God, that's just a pot, or that's just a square, we'll ignore that, that pushes us towards about well over 200 and gets us a bit closer to the story we thought we'd find there.
And what really debunks the myth that these were created by some sort of crazy Czech or uni students is the fact that these hieroglyphs are not just found in one area. They're all over the place. Is that not true?
Yes. There's two things that debunk it. We've actually found a second set of glyphs that no debunking theory, no national parks or government even know about. It is separate, a long way away. The important part of the story is, ladies and gentlemen, look at that 13 glyphs there, and we can read it. We know what it says, most of it, not all of it, because it's sitting around that 44% again. But a long way away, one-third the size, one-third the incision, completely different tools were used, but exactly the same glyphs. Are you telling me now that this so-called vandal or hoax has gone off and done another set of that's never just been found until about a year ago, along the way separately as also? This is becoming too duplicitous for just a random act of vandalism or stupidity.
Absolutely.
And it's so different. So this person is really clever, whether it's uni students or no one else. But here's the point. All the people who claimed or said they did it between the walls. Well, we've got other glyphs. We've put pictures up. They're there. And so far, guess what official response we've had from the fact we've posted it all over the place? Nothing.
So it sounds like just yet another government complicity or government conspiracy to cover this stuff up.
Well, let's call it endemic government apathy towards anything that doesn't fit into convenient truths. And let's try and be a little on the bright side without quoting from the life of Brian. I'm inclined to think in some cases I've even used those terms in one or two instances of things that have happened to us. But for now, I'll try and give them the benefit of the doubt when bugger all exists and say, well, maybe it's just utter apathy. But the science we have brought into this, and people can check our website, Forgotten Origins, and we've got a lot of science in here. It's been very well researched, and that's why we have some very powerful backers, because Evan and I don't work on our own. We work in a collective, and when we write a new article, we send it off to about 15 other people with degrees all over the place, and they all come back and they refine, and people on site that work with us have got a lot of knowledge too. So we come up with a collective statement. Our name might be on it, and we write most of it, but it's always under guidance. Just about to send one off to an elder because I've mentioned his name and I might have made a mistake. It's got to be checked because we're trying to make sure when we get this story out we don't make any mistakes.
Where you suggest it's government apathy, I kind of feel that this Australian government is trying to conceal this stuff to make out Captain Cook as some kind of discoverer or hero. He was nothing more than an imperialist colonizer as far as I can see. He was just an invader.
All right then, well look, what I'm going to say now will probably stock up your belief in a conspiracy and destroy mine that it's just ignorance, but I'll share the truth with you, okay?
Okay.
This is an absolute fact, and if anyone wants to check, they can, because it's true, because everyone knew what happened at the time. December the 10th, 2012, one of my friends who rarely raises before 9 rang us at 7 o'clock and said, you're not going to believe this, the article that we shared with an ABC report, and I'm going to use her name, and bless her for doing this before she got smashed by a boss. It's Mary Louise Vince, I think her name is. Vince. We've taken her out to some sites. We didn't take her out to the Gosford Glyphs. We shared with her half a dozen sites around the region to show how strong our case was. Well, what happened was she did an article up, 1 minute 40 seconds, and there it was, the second item on the ABC National News. It's on Triple J, and all the ABC things was in Perth. It was all over the country. And it was the second item, and I've got to tell you, if I'd done the item myself, I would have been slightly more negative than that item was. Then it gets better. My son goes to the website, because I don't know anything about this sort of crap, and tells me that there's going to be an article up. Well, I read it, and it was embarrassing. It was even more pro-us than the other one, because we took this woman out and showed her things. Proper archaeology. And she came away utterly stunned, and she knew there were Egyptians there. She knew something ancient was there. I could see it, because we showed her. Within an hour and a half, That item had been taken off every ABC outlet in this country. Within half an hour later, that website had been taken down, and 2 days later they put up a standard item that had written 10 years before by two archaeologists who said the glyphs are fake and they're all rubbish and they were done by deranged Yugoslav. The news item never mentioned the Gosford glyphs, the Bambara glyphs. We went away from it. We tried to show people there's so much supporting evidence around that place, we don't need them. We've got enough without them. But what then happened was it was taken off completely. Now, one of our backers is a professor from a university. We've got a few like that, and he's known. And he kept harassing them for an explanation from the ABC, our government broadcasters, fair and impartial and always, as we know. And the final answer was we took it off because we don't have to explain why. What we do know is that's never happened before. They only take items off when there's a public complaint,